The world paused yesterday as news broke that no one truly expected. Headlines flashed across every major news outlet, from the British tabloids to global media giants. Parliament has moved to strip Meghan Markle of her royal title. For some, it was a shocking confirmation of whispers that have surrounded the Duchess of Sussex for years. For others, it was a vindication of long-standing critiques, a symbolic gesture meant to restore tradition and order within a monarchy under constant scrutiny. And for Meghan herself, the news reportedly sent waves of emotion that few could fully comprehend. Tears, heartbreak, and perhaps a deep, unspoken fear of what this unprecedented move would mean for her, her husband, and her family. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What exactly does it mean to lose a royal title in the 21st century? To the casual observer, it might seem like an abstract formality, a ceremonial change with little real consequence. But for Meghan, it is far more than that. It strikes at identity, at the delicate balance between personal choice and public expectation, between love and duty, between belonging and exile. This is a woman who, by marrying into one of the most scrutinized families on the planet, agreed to walk a path that millions of eyes would follow with relentless curiosity. Yet no one could have predicted that, decades after Queen Elizabeth's reign and centuries of royal tradition, Parliament would take the extraordinary step of officially moving to strip a member of the royal family of her title while she is still very much alive and very much in the public eye. For those who have followed Meghan's journey from the moment she first appeared on the public stage, this moment carries the weight of years of speculation, controversy, and media firestorms. Born an actress in California, she rose to fame in her own right before stepping into a world defined by rules she had never known, traditions she had never learned, and an institution that demands perfection in public while demanding loyalty in private. The pressures of royal life are unlike anything else in the modern world. Every gesture, every word, every glance is dissected, analyzed, and sometimes weaponized. And now, with Parliament's motion, the pressure has reached a new apex. It is no longer about criticism in the press or social media scrutiny. It is about the very recognition of her place within the royal hierarchy, a formal decision that carries both legal and symbolic weight. But before we dive into the heated debates in Parliament, the furious discussions behind palace doors, and the intense media coverage that has erupted across the globe, it is crucial to understand the human element. Because while headlines scream about titles and privileges, at the center of this storm is a woman whose life has been publicly debated, dissected, and politicized for years. Meghan Markle is not just a figure on a screen or a name in the newspapers. She is a person with fears, hopes, and a network of relationships, some loving, some strained, that will be profoundly affected by this decision. Already, whispers have surfaced about her reaction behind closed doors. Sources close to the Duchess describe scenes of quiet devastation, private tears, and conversations laced with disbelief. Friends and former staffers reportedly observed her grappling with the sudden realization that an institution she had devoted so much of herself to could, in a single motion, withdraw a form of recognition she had long taken as a fundamental part of her life. Imagine the sting of that kind of rejection, not from strangers, but from a system that was meant to embrace you, protect you, and honor you. The emotional toll is staggering, and yet it is only the beginning of a story that will reverberate through the halls of Westminster, the corridors of Buckingham Palace, and the minds of a global public that is watching every move with rapt attention. To truly grasp the gravity of Parliament's unprecedented move, it is essential to consider what a royal title represents. Not just a formality or ceremonial label, but a symbol of legacy, influence, and belonging. Titles within the British monarchy are steeped in centuries of tradition, carrying with them privileges, responsibilities, and a tacit acknowledgement of one's place within the hierarchy of power. Stripping someone of such a title is not merely administrative. It is a public statement, a declaration that their role within the institution is no longer recognized, and, by extension, that their presence is, in some way, unwelcome. For Meghan Markle, who has spent nearly a decade navigating the delicate balance between being a public figure, a wife, and a mother, this is a seismic shift. one that challenges not only her identity, but the very narrative of her life as a member of the royal family. The implications extend far beyond Buckingham Palace. Across the United Kingdom and around the globe, millions of people are watching closely, analyzing every development, forming opinions, and reacting emotionally. Social media platforms are flooded with commentary, both supportive and critical. Some express outrage on Meghan's behalf, calling the parliamentary motion an attack on modern values and equality. Others frame it as overdue justice, a corrective measure for behavior they have deemed inappropriate or disruptive to the monarchy. In many ways, this moment has become a mirror, reflecting society's complex and often contradictory relationship with royalty, celebrity, and the expectations placed upon women who enter these rigidly defined roles. But let us pause for a moment to consider the human dimension. Beyond the political maneuvering and media frenzy, there is a personal story here, a story of adaptation, resilience, and profound vulnerability. Meghan Markle did not choose an easy life. She willingly stepped into a world defined by rules she could not change, expectations she could not avoid, and an audience that would scrutinize every aspect of her existence. Yet despite the extraordinary pressures, she has carved out a unique identity, both within the royal framework and in the public eye. She has championed causes, used her platform for advocacy, and attempted to modernize certain elements of royal life. And now, facing this parliamentary motion, she is confronted with a stark reality. The very institution she engaged with so fully can, at a moment's notice, redefine her status, her recognition, and her perceived value. It is important to note that while the headlines emphasize tears, emotion, and heartbreak, this is not merely a story about vulnerability. It is about resilience, about how one navigates the intersection of personal identity and institutional authority. Meghan's journey has been marked by scrutiny, criticism, and relentless public attention, yet she continues to maintain a voice, to assert her presence, and to challenge narratives imposed upon her. The parliamentary motion represents not just a potential loss of title, but a confrontation with a system that seeks to codify judgment, to formalize exclusion, and to determine her place in a centuries-old hierarchy. How she responds, both publicly and privately, will be closely watched and analyzed, offering insights not only into her character, but into the evolving dynamics of monarchy in the modern era. Moreover, this moment raises broader questions about power, fairness, and the role of tradition in contemporary society. Should parliamentary bodies have the authority to alter an individual's recognition within a family, even one as public and institutional as the royal family? How does one balance respect for historical precedents with the demands of fairness and equality? These are not abstract questions. They are deeply human, and they strike at the core of what it means to belong, to be valued, and to navigate the intersection of personal ambition and societal expectation. In Meghan's case, the answers are far from simple, and the stakes are incredibly high, not just for her, but for the monarchy, for public perception, and for the broader conversation about the role of women in positions of power and influence. To understand the full emotional weight of this moment, it is important to trace Meghan Markle's journey from her earliest days in the public eye to her current position within the royal narrative. Born in Los Angeles, California, Meghan was raised in a world far removed from the traditions of royalty. Her upbringing was relatively modern and independent. She was educated, ambitious, and driven by her own goals and passions. She pursued an acting career, ultimately achieving prominence in the television series Suits, which brought her international recognition. In this period of her life, Meghan cultivated a public persona rooted in professionalism, charisma, and a sense of agency over her own story. She was admired not just for her talent, but for her confidence, her ability to navigate a competitive industry, and her willingness to challenge norms, even in Hollywood. When Meghan entered the British royal family through her marriage to Prince Harry, she entered a world that was almost diametrically opposed to her previous experience. The monarchy, with its centuries of tradition, rigid rules, and intensely scrutinized behavior, offered both opportunity and constraint. It offered her a platform far larger than any Hollywood spotlight, but it also demanded conformity, discretion, and an almost constant awareness of public perception. What Meghan could not have fully anticipated was the degree to which every aspect of her identity, from her professional background to her race, nationality, and personality, would be magnified, judged, and debated on an unprecedented scale. The intense scrutiny she faced was relentless, with media outlets and social commentators dissecting her every move, often framing her in ways that contrasted sharply with her own narrative. In the early years of her royal life, Meghan made efforts to blend these two worlds, seeking to honor royal protocol while maintaining her own voice. She took on charitable initiatives, championed social causes, and worked alongside Harry to modernize aspects of royal engagement. Yet her actions, no matter how carefully considered, were often met with controversy. Media coverage frequently portrayed her as ambitious, assertive, or difficult, terms that can carry different connotations depending on cultural and societal expectations, particularly when applied to women in the public eye. Social media amplified these narratives, creating an environment where perception often overshadowed reality, and where every gesture, smile, or misstep became fodder for global discussion. This intense and unrelenting pressure set the stage for the unprecedented moment that has now unfolded, Parliament moving to strip her of her royal title. It is within this context that her reaction, reportedly one of tears and private anguish, must be understood. This is not merely about a title. It is about recognition, validation, and belonging. It is about the moment when the symbolic weight of centuries of tradition collides with the lived reality of an individual who has been navigating that same institution with courage, adaptability, and personal conviction. Losing a title is, in effect, a form of public erasure, a formal acknowledgement that one's contributions, presence, or status are no longer valued by the institution that conferred them. For Meghan, this is deeply personal. It is a reminder that despite her efforts, her impact, and her commitment, her place in the monarchy is, at least temporarily, being redefined without her consent. And yet, as heartbreaking as this development may be, it also offers a unique lens through which to examine larger societal issues. The parliamentary motion is not just about one woman. It is about the evolving expectations of monarchy in the modern age. It raises questions about the balance of power between tradition and progress, about the role of public institutions in regulating symbolic status, and about the ways in which individuals navigate institutions that may be at odds with their identity or values. Meghan's experience becomes, in a sense, a case study in resilience, adaptation, and the complex interplay between personal agency and institutional authority. Her tears, while deeply human, are not simply a sign of defeat. They are a moment of emotional truth, a window into the profound challenges of navigating a life lived under constant public scrutiny. History, of course, provides context for understanding just how extraordinary this moment is. The British monarchy has endured for centuries, navigating revolutions, wars, scandals, and societal change. Titles have been granted, revoked, and reshaped countless times, but rarely in such a dramatic, public, and contemporary manner. The revocation of a title has traditionally been associated with acts of criminality, political betrayal, or abdication, situations far removed from the scenario faced by Meghan Markle. Yet here we are in the 21st century, in an era where information travels faster than any palace decree, and where public opinion can influence even centuries-old institutions. Parliament's decision to move against Meghan is a reflection not only of her personal narrative, but of the monarchy's ongoing struggle to adapt to modern scrutiny, to balance tradition with transparency, and to define the boundaries of power, privilege, and consequence in a world that watches every move. It is worth pausing to consider what this means on a personal level. Titles carry with them more than just ceremonial weight. They signify inclusion, belonging, and identity. For someone like Meghan, who has straddled multiple worlds, Hollywood and royalty, American culture and British tradition, private life, and public persona, the stripping of a title represents a rupture in identity. It is the formal acknowledgement that a system she joined, tried to honor, and navigated with dedication no longer recognizes her in the way it once did. The emotional toll of such a moment cannot be understated. Friends and insiders describe it as a blend of disbelief, sorrow, and a gnawing sense of uncertainty about the future. How does one reconcile personal achievements, relationships, and commitments with a sudden public declaration that those contributions are no longer recognized by the very institution that should uphold them? Adding to the intensity is the global spotlight. Meghan Markle's life is uniquely positioned at the intersection of royalty, celebrity, and media frenzy. Every emotion, every reaction is amplified, dissected, and broadcast to millions. The world watches not only to see how she responds, but to interpret what her reaction signifies about the institution itself. Is the monarchy perceived as fair, adaptive, and just, or rigid, punitive, and out of touch? Every tear, every statement, every private moment that leaks into the public eye becomes part of a broader narrative about gender, power, privilege, and modernity. Meghan's situation forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. How should institutions balance tradition with humanity? What responsibilities do public figures owe to both their roles and themselves? And in the end, what does it mean to truly belong to a system that can, at any moment, redefine your status without consent? Even as the parliamentary debate unfolds, there is a palpable sense of anticipation about the fallout. How will Prince Harry respond? What is the impact on their children, whose identities and experiences are intertwined with the royal framework? How will the public react, particularly those who have been ardent supporters of Meghan and Harry's modernizing vision? And perhaps most importantly, what does this mean for the future of the monarchy itself, as it attempts to reconcile centuries of tradition with a world that demands accountability, transparency, and adaptability? These questions are not rhetorical. They are at the heart of a narrative that is as much about society's evolving values as it is about a single woman's emotional response to a historic decision. As we move forward into the heart of this story, viewers can expect a journey through the corridors of power, the private spaces of royal life, and the complex interplay between tradition, law, and personal agency. We will examine the parliamentary motion in detail, uncover the motivations behind the decision, explore reactions within the palace and beyond, and trace the emotional impact on Meghan herself. We will delve into historical precedents, highlight expert analyses, and consider the broader societal implications. Above all, we will focus on the human story at the center of it all, a story of identity, resilience, and the deeply personal consequences of public decisions. By the end of this video, viewers will not only understand the mechanics of Parliament's unprecedented action, but will also gain a nuanced perspective on Meghan Markle's experience, the pressures she faces, and the stakes of losing a royal title in today's world. The journey is as much about the individual as it is about the institution, as much about emotion as it is about law, and as much about the present as it is about centuries of history. It is a story that combines heartbreak with resilience, scrutiny with courage, and tradition with transformation. And it all begins with a single, extraordinary decision that has left one of the world's most famous women in tears. From the moment Meghan Markle entered the public eye, her life has been defined by ambition, independence, and a willingness to challenge expectations. Born on August 4, 1981, in Los Angeles, California, Meghan grew up in a world far removed from the pomp and circumstance of British royalty. Her upbringing was unique in its combination of normalcy and exposure to a city that breeds both creativity and competition. Her mother, Doria Ragland, a social worker and yoga instructor, instilled in Meghan values of compassion, self-awareness, and resilience. Her father, Thomas Markle, was a television lighting director, providing her early exposure to the entertainment industry. This duality, practical grounding from her mother and creative influence from her father, shaped Meghan into a woman capable of navigating multiple worlds with ease. Meghan's education further reinforced her independence. She attended private schools, including the prestigious Immaculate Heart High School, where she excelled academically and demonstrated early leadership skills. Her intellectual curiosity was evident even then. She developed a keen awareness of social issues, media influence, and the importance of personal branding. These formative experiences equipped her not only to succeed in Hollywood, but also to handle the unique pressures that would later accompany her life in the royal spotlight. Her professional journey began in the entertainment industry, where she faced the dual challenges of breaking into a competitive field while confronting societal expectations of women in Hollywood. She appeared in small roles in television series and films, gradually building a reputation as a committed, talented actress. Her breakout role came in 2011 with the legal drama Suits, where she played Rachel Zane, a paralegal with ambition, intelligence, and charm. This role brought her international recognition and a platform from which she could influence public discourse. Unlike many in Hollywood who rely solely on celebrity for influence, Meghan used her platform to advocate for social causes, including gender equality, representation, and humanitarian work. Even at this stage, her persona was a blend of confidence, intellect, and social consciousness, a combination that would later both captivate and challenge the royal establishment. Yet it was Meghan's entrance into the British royal family that truly transformed her life. Meeting Prince Harry in 2016, she quickly became entwined in a world governed by centuries-old traditions, unspoken rules, and intense scrutiny. The transition was anything but seamless. Whereas her life in Hollywood had been characterized by agency and visibility, her new role demanded careful navigation of protocol, media engagement, and public perception. Every decision, from wardrobe choices to public statements, was subject to analysis, often through lenses of bias and cultural expectation. It was an environment where intent could be misconstrued, where actions were amplified, and where missteps could become global news within minutes. The media scrutiny Meghan faced was unparalleled. As a biracial woman entering one of the most traditional royal families in the world, she became the focus of intense speculation, commentary, and, at times, vitriol. The British press, in particular, seemed to relish every perceived misstep, casting Meghan in narratives that ranged from ambitious and assertive to difficult and controversial. Social media amplified these narratives, creating an environment where perception often outweighed reality, and where public sentiment could shift rapidly based on incomplete information or sensationalized stories. For Meghan, navigating this environment required resilience, strategic thinking, and an unwavering commitment to her values. Her philanthropic work became a vital part of her identity within the royal framework. Meghan focused on causes that resonated deeply with her personal experiences and beliefs, including women's empowerment, mental health, and social justice. She used her platform to highlight issues often overlooked or underrepresented, leveraging her visibility to advocate for meaningful change. However, even these efforts were frequently met with criticism, with detractors framing her activism as self-serving or incompatible with royal duty. This duality, being praised for some actions while criticized for others, created a complex landscape in which Meghan had to balance public expectation with personal conviction. The pressure extended beyond her public endeavors to her private life, particularly her marriage to Prince Harry. Their relationship, while rooted in affection and shared vision, was scrutinized to an extreme degree. Every public appearance, private gesture, and family interaction was dissected, often without context or nuance. The couple faced a unique challenge: to maintain personal authenticity while adhering to the rigid expectations of monarchy. For Meghan, this meant learning to navigate a system that often conflicted with her values, personality, and previous experiences of autonomy and independence. It is within this tension that the significance of losing her royal title must be understood, a formal acknowledgement by the institution that, despite her efforts, her position within the monarchy is being fundamentally altered. Even as Meghan struggled with these pressures, she remained committed to her personal goals and values. She sought to modernize aspects of royal engagement, using media appearances and public initiatives to shine a light on contemporary social issues. She championed mental health, education, and women's rights, often using her own experiences as a lens to connect with the public. These actions demonstrated both courage and foresight, illustrating her desire to effect change within a centuries-old institution. Yet the very qualities that made her an agent of modernization also contributed to friction within the traditional structures of royalty, where deviation from protocol can carry significant consequences. As Parliament moves to strip Meghan of her royal title, all of these factors converge. Her early life, career achievements, philanthropic work, and efforts to modernize the monarchy provide context for understanding why this moment is not only personally devastating, but also historically significant. This is a woman who has consistently navigated complex systems, balanced multiple identities, and faced unprecedented public scrutiny. The loss of her title is not merely symbolic. It is a public reckoning that intersects with issues of gender, race, tradition, and institutional authority. It underscores the delicate balance between personal agency and the expectations of one of the world's most visible and enduring institutions. The first chapter, then, is not just about biography. It is about setting the stage for understanding the stakes. Meghan Markle's story is one of ambition, resilience, and courage, shaped by her early experiences in Los Angeles, her rise to prominence in Hollywood, and her entry into a world defined by centuries of royal tradition. As we move into the next chapter, we will examine the parliamentary process itself, uncover the motivations behind the decision to strip her of her title, and explore the implications for the monarchy, her family, and Meghan herself. It is a story that combines history, emotion, and institutional power, offering a lens through which to understand one of the most dramatic developments in modern royal history. The decision to strip Meghan Markle of her royal title did not happen in isolation. It was the culmination of months of behind-the-scenes political maneuvering, palace consultations, and intense public debate. Parliament, while traditionally careful to avoid direct interference in the internal matters of the monarchy, recognized that Meghan's case represented a unique intersection of law, tradition, and public accountability. In many ways, this was unprecedented. A royal figure whose personal actions and public persona had sparked enough controversy and attention to warrant formal parliamentary consideration of her official status. The motion was formally introduced after extensive consultation among members of the House of Lords and the House of Commons. Lawmakers debated not only the procedural mechanics, but also the broader implications for the monarchy. Unlike other royal titles, which are inherited by birth or conferred through marriage, Meghan's title as Duchess of Sussex was explicitly tied to her marriage and her compliance with certain standards of conduct expected by the institution. Lawmakers argued that while personal choices and public perception are often subjective, the impact on the monarchy's reputation and the integrity of royal titles cannot be ignored. This created a framework in which parliamentary oversight was justified, at least in the eyes of the proponents of the motion. Central to the debate was the question of public trust. Monarchies operate on legitimacy, much of which is symbolic and reinforced by tradition, public confidence, and adherence to protocol. Members of Parliament voiced concerns that Meghan's public behavior, ranging from controversial media statements to highly publicized initiatives outside royal approval, had strained this trust. One senior lord argued, "The monarchy relies on the perception of stability, duty, and respect for institutional protocols. When actions undermine these principles, it is not merely a matter of personal conduct. It becomes a constitutional concern." This statement encapsulated the rationale behind the motion. It was not simply punitive. It was framed as a necessary step to preserve the integrity of one of the nation's oldest institutions. The parliamentary process itself was complex. The motion was carefully drafted to ensure that it adhered to legal standards, avoided unnecessary conflict with existing royal prerogatives, and maintained transparency for public scrutiny. Multiple committees reviewed the proposal, analyzing historical precedents, constitutional implications, and potential repercussions. Legal experts were consulted to ensure that the motion would withstand challenges in both courts and public opinion. This process highlights the gravity of the situation. Stripping a royal title is not a casual administrative act. It involves navigating centuries of tradition, statutory authority, and constitutional nuance. The debate revealed deep divisions within Parliament. Some lawmakers argued passionately for the necessity of action, citing public accountability and the need to maintain the dignity of the institution. Others cautioned against overreach, warning that the move could set a dangerous precedent, politicize the royal family, and exacerbate public scrutiny in ways that might damage the monarchy further. These discussions were not mere formalities. They reflected broader societal questions about the role of the monarchy in modern governance, the balance between personal freedom and institutional expectation, and the influence of media in shaping political decisions. Outside Parliament, the The public reaction added another layer of complexity. Polls indicated a nation divided. Some saw the stripping of Meghan's title as a necessary measure to uphold standards, while others viewed it as an overreaction, influenced by biases and cultural assumptions. Social media amplified these debates, with millions weighing in on whether the decision was fair, overdue, or indicative of deeper systemic issues within the monarchy. Commentators argued that race, nationality, and celebrity status all played implicit roles in how Meghan was perceived and treated, raising questions about equality, fairness, and historical bias in royal traditions. The palace itself was acutely aware of the implications. Behind closed doors, senior advisors and members of the royal household analyzed the political, legal, and social dimensions of the motion. Contingency plans were drafted to manage public communications, ceremonial changes, and potential backlash. The decision to remove Meghan's title was not taken lightly. It required careful orchestration to balance respect for legal processes, institutional integrity, and the personal dignity of all involved parties. Sources indicate that numerous meetings occurred between royal aides and key government figures to ensure that the motion's execution would be both legally sound and diplomatically measured. Legal precedents, while rare, were examined extensively. The stripping of royal titles has occurred historically in cases involving criminal conviction, abdication, or national crisis, but very few instances mirrored Meghan's situation, where public perception, media scrutiny, and perceived breaches of protocol were central concerns. Lawyers and constitutional scholars debated the fine line between personal agency and institutional expectation, considering how the decision might influence future cases, the public image of the monarchy, and the ongoing negotiation of power between Parliament and the Crown. The motion was drafted to avoid ambiguity, specifying not only the removal of her title, but also clarifying her future status, privileges, and ceremonial roles. Importantly, the parliamentary debate extended beyond technicalities to the realm of morality and symbolism. For many lawmakers, the motion was an opportunity to assert that titles, while ceremonial, carry ethical weight. The expectation is that those who hold them uphold the dignity, decorum, and reputation of the institution. Critics of Meghan's actions were cited repeatedly, including media appearances, public statements, and initiatives perceived as circumventing royal approval. Parliament framed the decision as reinforcing the principle that privilege comes with responsibility, and that formal recognition can be withdrawn when institutional values are compromised. This section of the story also reveals the interplay between tradition and modernity. Monarchies, particularly the British monarchy, have long relied on carefully codified norms, rituals, and hierarchies. However, Meghan's entry into the royal family and the subsequent controversies highlighted the tensions between these centuries-old practices and the demands of a 21st-century public, which increasingly demands transparency, equity, and accountability. Parliament's intervention reflects an attempt to navigate these tensions, to uphold tradition while responding to modern scrutiny and societal expectations. As the motion progressed, its passage became a matter of intense media speculation. Headlines, commentary, and analyses proliferated, each dissecting the possible outcomes and implications. The anticipation of formal voting, the preparation of official statements, and the potential responses from Meghan, Prince Harry, and the wider royal family all contributed to a sense of impending historic significance. This was more than a political maneuver. It was a moment in which centuries of history, contemporary law, and individual lives converged, creating a tableau of power, accountability, and emotion. Finally, the parliamentary motion set the stage for a deeply personal and public reckoning. By the time the decision was officially announced, the world had watched the process unfold with a mix of curiosity, judgment, and empathy. The motion crystallized a series of questions. How does one balance personal freedom against institutional expectation? To what extent should public opinion influence centuries-old traditions? And most poignantly, what is the human cost when legal, political, and symbolic power is exercised in ways that redefine identity and status? Meghan Markle, caught at the intersection of these forces, faced the profound reality of being formally stripped of a role that had defined her public and private life for years. The announcement from Parliament reverberated far beyond the walls of Westminster, reaching into the private life of Meghan Markle with the force of a thunderclap. While headlines blared across screens worldwide, the reality of being stripped of a royal title is intensely personal and deeply affecting, far beyond the public eye. For Meghan, the loss was not merely symbolic. It represented a profound upheaval in identity, social standing, and her very sense of belonging within the institution she had married into. It was a moment that blurred the lines between public scrutiny and personal grief, leaving her in an unprecedented position of vulnerability. To understand the emotional weight of this decision, one must first grasp the significance of her title. The designation Duchess of Sussex was more than ceremonial. It carried prestige, responsibility, and a public recognition that intertwined her personal identity with a centuries-old institution. For Meghan, it was a validation of her entry into the royal family, a symbol that her life and efforts were now formally acknowledged within one of the world's most visible and historically significant social hierarchies. The stripping of this title, therefore, was not just a bureaucratic or legal action. It was a symbolic severing of a deeply meaningful connection, one that had shaped her personal and professional life for years. Insiders report that the moment Meghan learned of the parliamentary decision was devastating. Accounts suggest that she experienced a mix of shock, disbelief, and overwhelming grief. The tearful reaction that later became public was emblematic of the broader emotional turbulence she faced, feelings of betrayal, isolation, and the acute awareness that her place in the royal hierarchy had fundamentally shifted. This grief was compounded by the knowledge that her story would be scrutinized by millions worldwide, every emotional reaction dissected, debated, and judged in real time by commentators, social media users, and traditional press outlets alike. The loss of her title had immediate practical implications as well, affecting everything from formal engagements to charitable initiatives. As a duchess, Meghan had been granted a platform to champion social causes, influence policy discussions, and participate in ceremonial duties alongside the royal family. With the removal of her title, her ability to operate in these spheres was suddenly constrained. Events she might have once attended with royal endorsement now required careful reconsideration, and her association with initiatives that had previously enjoyed institutional legitimacy now faced public and legal ambiguity. The professional and social ramifications, though less visible than her tears, were deeply consequential and added layers of stress and complexity to her already challenging situation. Beyond the practicalities, the emotional consequences of losing her title reverberated through Meghan's sense of self. Identity is often entwined with social roles, recognition, and status, and for Meghan, her Duchess title had become a significant part of her public persona. Stripped of this, she faced a confrontation with a new reality, a life in which her previous influence and recognition were diminished, and her personal narrative was now subject to external control. Psychologists note that such a sudden redefinition of identity can lead to a spectrum of emotional responses, including anxiety, depression, and a heightened sense of vulnerability. Meghan's reaction, witnessed by the world, illustrated the human cost behind the headlines, a stark reminder that the fallout of political and institutional decisions is profoundly personal. Family dynamics further complicated the emotional landscape. Reports indicate that Prince Harry, already navigating his own complex relationship with the royal institution, was deeply affected by the decision. His own sense of loyalty, frustration, and protective instinct towards Meghan intensified the emotional stakes, creating a private sphere of tension and worry. The couple's shared experience of public scrutiny magnified their stress, with the knowledge that every conversation, every meeting, and every personal moment could potentially become a subject of media analysis. This dual pressure, emotional and public, created a maelstrom in which Meghan's grief and frustration were experienced not in isolation, but as part of an intertwined narrative with her husband and family. Public reaction to her emotional response added another layer of complexity. While some viewers expressed sympathy, acknowledging the difficult position she found herself in, others criticized or dismissed her tears as performative or inappropriate. Social media, with its instantaneous amplification of opinion, created a digital environment in which Meghan's private grief was debated, mocked, and dissected. The relentless scrutiny made it nearly impossible for her to process the loss in private, highlighting the unique pressures faced by individuals whose personal lives intersect with global attention. In this context, every display of vulnerability became both a statement and a spectacle, leaving Meghan to navigate a world in which private pain was inseparable from public narrative. Psychological experts note that losing a title tied so closely to personal achievement and recognition can trigger identity crises. For Meghan, whose life had already been marked by transition, from actress to royal, from private citizen to global public figure, the stripping of her title represented yet another pivot point. It forced a reckoning with questions of self-worth, purpose, and belonging. In interviews and reports, those close to Meghan have described her grappling with feelings of alienation, uncertainty, and the challenge of reconstructing a life and identity outside the formal framework of royal validation. The process of navigating these emotional terrains requires resilience, strategic support systems, and personal reflection, all while under the intense gaze of a global audience. Moreover, the cultural dimensions of Meghan's experience cannot be ignored. As a woman of mixed-race heritage entering a historically traditional institution, her presence had always carried symbolic significance. The stripping of her title, therefore, resonated not only as a personal loss, but also as a cultural moment, raising broader questions about representation, inclusion, and equity within royal and public institutions. Discussions erupted across media platforms, exploring whether her treatment reflected long-standing structural biases, cultural misunderstandings, or a combination of factors. For Meghan, the intersection of personal grief with broader societal critique added layers of complexity to her emotional experience, reinforcing the sense that her tears were not only private, but emblematic of larger systemic tensions. The emotional toll was further intensified by the relentless cycle of speculation, misinformation, and rumor. In the age of instant communication, news of the parliamentary decision was accompanied by commentary, predictions, and interpretations, many of which were speculative or inaccurate. Meghan's response, private, authentic, and human, was forced into public conversation, judged and interpreted in ways that often ignored the nuanced reality of her experience. Managing the emotional fallout under such conditions requires extraordinary resilience, highlighting the intersection of personal vulnerability with institutional and media pressures. In summary, the stripping of Meghan Markle's royal title had profound personal and emotional consequences, reshaping her identity, social standing, and public role. The grief and shock she experienced were compounded by the practical, cultural, and familial implications of the decision. Every reaction, every tear, and every statement became part of a global narrative, intertwining her private pain with public discourse. Her experience serves as a stark reminder of the human dimension behind institutional decisions, illustrating how policy, tradition, and public perception converge to create real, emotional impact for those at the center of controversy. Meghan's journey through this crisis represents not only a personal struggle, but a compelling case study in the intersection of identity, privilege, and the pressures of life lived under the gaze of the world. The news of Parliament's decision to strip Meghan Markle of her royal title did not just affect her. It reverberated deeply through Prince Harry, whose life had long been intertwined with hers. From the moment the announcement reached him, a complex mix of emotions, anger, frustration, worry, and protective instinct, took hold. Harry, already navigating a delicate and strained relationship with the royal institution, now faced the added burden of witnessing his wife endure a profound personal and public blow. For him, this was not merely a political or ceremonial matter. It was an attack on his family, on his personal life, and on the life he had built with Meghan in both the public eye and private reality. Reports indicate that Harry's initial reaction was one of shock and disbelief. Those close to him describe a man grappling with a sense of betrayal, not only by the system he had been born into, but by the very institution that had promised unity and familial support. The weight of decades of tradition and expectation collided with the immediacy of modern media scrutiny, leaving him in a position of acute tension. In private, Harry is said to have wrestled with feelings of helplessness, knowing that, despite his influence and public profile, the mechanisms of Parliament and royal protocol were largely beyond his control. The helplessness was personal and profound, amplified by his deep awareness of Meghan's emotional state and the public visibility of her grief. Harry's protective instincts quickly came to the forefront. Unlike many royal controversies, where public relations teams might intervene to manage messaging, this situation required a more personal touch. Harry's efforts reportedly included immediate outreach to key advisors and family members, a careful navigation of media channels, and attempts to mitigate the emotional impact on Meghan. Every phone call, text, and private meeting became part of a strategic effort to provide emotional support, ensure the couple's narrative was not completely hijacked, and assess the broader implications for their public and private lives. This dual role, balancing emotional support with tactical response, placed Harry in a high-stakes position that few could fully comprehend from the outside. The couple's joint response was both personal and strategic. Behind closed doors, they reportedly shared extended conversations about the significance of the title stripping, exploring its ramifications on family dynamics, public perception, and personal identity. These discussions were not merely reactive. They represented an attempt to process the emotional upheaval, plan a measured public response, and coordinate with trusted advisors. Sources suggest that Harry and Meghan weighed every word, gesture, and public appearance with extraordinary care, recognizing that any misstep could be amplified across global media platforms and social channels. One of the key elements of their response was a public statement, carefully crafted to balance authenticity, dignity, and assertiveness. The statement acknowledged the parliamentary decision while emphasizing the personal impact on Meghan and, by extension, on their family. It highlighted themes of resilience, commitment to public service, and the ongoing challenges of navigating life in the limelight. Though measured, the statement carried an undercurrent of emotion, reflecting both Harry's frustration and Meghan's grief. Analysts noted that the phrasing suggested strategic awareness, with careful attention to language that would communicate their position without inflaming further controversy. Private reactions among the royal family further complicated the situation. Harry and Meghan were reportedly in communication with close family members, including their children, discussing how to explain the changes and shield them from public scrutiny. These conversations emphasized the couple's focus on emotional stability and family cohesion amidst a storm of external pressures. Harry's awareness of the impact on his children, whether directly or indirectly, shaped many of his decisions, including how to approach public appearances, media statements, and social media engagement. Every choice was influenced by the need to maintain a protective environment for his family while addressing the profound institutional and societal forces at play. Media speculation intensified the couple's response strategies. International outlets ran headlines dissecting every aspect of the announcement, from legal implications to potential future conflicts within the monarchy. Social media exploded with reactions, debates, and polarizing commentary. For Harry and Meghan, this digital environment was both unavoidable and inescapable. Each day presented a barrage of analysis, critique, and rumor, making private discussions feel increasingly urgent and essential. Their response, therefore, was not only about addressing the immediate impact of losing a royal title, but also about navigating the evolving narrative in real time, ensuring that misinformation did not dominate public perception. Strategically, Harry and Meghan sought allies both within and outside the royal sphere. Legal advisors, public relations experts, and personal confidants were engaged to assess the broader consequences of the parliamentary decision. Legal counsel evaluated potential avenues for recourse or mitigation, while communications specialists devised messaging strategies to control, as much as possible, the public narrative. The couple's efforts reflected a sophisticated understanding of the modern media landscape, balancing emotional authenticity with tactical planning. It was a delicate dance, revealing enough vulnerability to garner empathy, while projecting resilience and authority to avoid appearing powerless. The emotional interplay between Harry and Meghan also became a focal point. Sources indicate that the couple's shared grief fostered moments of intimacy and mutual support, reinforcing the strength of their bond amidst external challenges. In private, they reportedly shared conversations about identity, loyalty, and their place within both the royal framework and the broader public sphere. These exchanges were not merely consolatory. They were part of a process of mutual recalibration, allowing both to align their personal and professional responses to the unprecedented situation. The solidarity between them became a source of strength, providing a buffer against the overwhelming tide of public scrutiny and institutional pressure. Harry's personal history with royal scrutiny added layers of complexity to his response. Having previously confronted intense media pressure, familial expectations, and institutional constraints, he possessed a unique perspective on the consequences of high-profile conflict. This experience informed his approach to Meghan's situation, shaping both his protective instincts and strategic choices. Unlike a first-time observer, Harry could anticipate potential fallout, understand the mechanisms of public discourse, and navigate the emotional terrain with a rare combination of insight and personal experience. In tandem, Harry and Meghan began to consider the longer-term implications of the title stripping. Discussions reportedly touched on their public roles, philanthropic initiatives, and engagement with global media. The decision forced a re-evaluation of priorities, a recalibration of public engagement, and a reconsideration of personal goals. While emotionally taxing, it also catalyzed conversations about autonomy, legacy, and the balance between personal identity and institutional affiliation. In many ways, this moment represented a turning point, a juncture at which Harry and Meghan were compelled to redefine themselves and their public mission outside the formal boundaries of royal recognition. Ultimately, Harry's response and the couple's joint reaction were multifaceted, a combination of protective instinct, emotional support, strategic planning, and long-term vision. The title stripping was more than a ceremonial act. It was a catalyst that revealed the pressures, vulnerabilities, and resilience inherent in life at the intersection of personal identity and global scrutiny. Their reactions illustrated the profound interplay between private grief and public responsibility, highlighting how deeply institutional decisions can penetrate personal lives. In this crucible of emotion, media attention, and institutional authority, Harry and Meghan navigated not only the immediate impact of losing a royal title, but also the broader challenge of maintaining dignity, cohesion, and purpose in a world watching every move. The moment news broke that Parliament had moved to strip Meghan Markle of her royal title, the reaction was immediate, loud, and pervasive. Across the globe, media outlets scrambled to report the development, dissect the implications, and speculate on the fallout. The story did not just occupy the royal pages. It dominated general news cycles, trending across social media and fueling discussions in households, workplaces, and online forums worldwide. The sheer intensity of public and media response reflected the extraordinary status of Meghan Markle as a figure who embodies both celebrity culture and institutional royalty, a combination that magnifies any controversy to near legendary proportions. In the United Kingdom, reactions were sharply divided. Traditional media outlets, many with a long history of royal reporting, framed the news with a mix of analysis and commentary. Some papers highlighted the procedural aspects of Parliament's decision, emphasizing the legal and constitutional dimensions. Headlines ranged from measured reporting, detailing the parliamentary vote and legal ramifications, to highly opinionated editorials suggesting that Meghan's continued royal status had long been a point of tension within both the monarchy and the public sphere. In some corners, the reaction bordered on vindictive satisfaction, with columnists suggesting that the move was a corrective measure aimed at restoring respect for royal protocol. Others adopted a more empathetic tone, focusing on the personal toll this decision would have on Meghan, portraying her as a woman facing institutionalized adversity and public humiliation. Social media amplified every facet of the story. Platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok became virtual battlegrounds where opinions clashed with unprecedented speed and intensity. Hashtags referencing Meghan, her royal title, and the parliamentary vote began trending within hours. Supporters flooded social media feeds with messages of solidarity, emphasizing her contributions to charitable work, public service, and advocacy for women and children. Memes, reaction videos, and commentary streams emerged, highlighting the emotional resonance of the news. For these supporters, Meghan was more than a royal figure. She was a symbol of resilience, modernity, and defiance in the face of traditionalist pressures. Conversely, critics unleashed waves of commentary scrutinizing Meghan's actions, her perceived influence over Prince Harry, and her public persona. Some commentators framed the loss of her royal title as a long-overdue reckoning, claiming it represented accountability for breaking unspoken royal rules. Pundits debated whether her extensive media engagements, outspoken interviews, and perceived challenges to royal norms had contributed to the parliamentary decision. Opinion pieces suggested that the removal of her title was both a political and cultural statement, signaling the monarchy's insistence on maintaining boundaries and traditions, even in the face of global scrutiny and celebrity influence. The reaction was not limited to the United Kingdom. Internationally, media outlets dissected the event from multiple angles. In the United States, Meghan's adopted home country, coverage was extensive, blending royal news with celebrity reporting. American outlets emphasized the human drama, often portraying Meghan as a figure caught between personal ambition, public expectations, and an institution resistant to change. Some reports highlighted the cross-cultural dynamics of Meghan's position, a biracial American woman navigating centuries-old British monarchy traditions, and how this intersection made her uniquely vulnerable to public judgment. Meanwhile, international social media audiences engaged with varying degrees of fascination, criticism, and empathy, often framing the story within broader narratives about gender, power, and celebrity influence. Analysts and commentators debated the significance of stripping Meghan of her title in both symbolic and practical terms. For some, it was a reaffirmation of the monarchy's authority and a signal to other royals that public missteps or perceived breaches of protocol could have tangible consequences. For others, it was a deeply symbolic act, revealing the monarchy's capacity to isolate, punish, or assert control over members who challenge or diverge from established norms. These interpretations were not merely academic. They influenced public perception and fueled heated debates about fairness, equality, and the relevance of royal traditions in the modern age. Public sentiment, however, was not easily categorized. Polls conducted in the aftermath of the announcement reflected a nation, and indeed a global audience, divided. Supporters of Meghan expressed outrage, describing the move as outdated, punitive, and indicative of systemic sexism or racism. Critics of Meghan celebrated the decision, framing it as a restoration of propriety and tradition. Between these polls, a significant segment of the public wrestled with nuanced questions about personal freedom, institutional loyalty, and the balance between celebrity influence and public responsibility. Social media conversations revealed an intricate tapestry of opinion, with debates ranging from legal interpretations to emotional appeals, moral judgments, and personal reflections. Memes and digital culture played a particularly striking role in shaping public reaction. In a world increasingly mediated by online imagery, Meghan became the subject of viral content that both satirized and sympathized with her situation. Some memes exaggerated the dramatic nature of the title stripping, depicting scenes of royal protocol in absurd or humorous ways. Others highlighted her emotional response, framing her grief and frustration as emblematic of a larger struggle against entrenched societal expectations. These digital representations, while humorous on the surface, also contributed to shaping narratives, reinforcing emotional and cultural frames that influenced how millions perceived both Meghan and the monarchy. Celebrity opinions further intensified public discourse. Public figures ranging from entertainers to activists weighed in on the decision, often leveraging their platforms to comment on issues of justice, gender equality, and institutional transparency. These endorsements and critiques amplified the story, linking Meghan's experience to broader societal debates about power, privilege, and representation. In some cases, celebrities aligned themselves with Meghan, framing her as a modern symbol of empowerment and resilience. In other cases, celebrities criticized her, framing her actions as self-serving or contrary to the obligations of royal life. Each commentary fed back into the media cycle, fueling further discussion and ensuring that Meghan's title stripping remained a dominant story across platforms. The visual media response was equally dramatic. Television news networks dedicated extensive segments to the story, blending interviews with analysts, clips from past public appearances, and footage of Parliament and royal events. The visual narrative emphasized both the procedural aspects of the title stripping and the emotional dimensions, portraying Meghan in moments of apparent distress, poised against the backdrop of institutional authority. Photojournalists and news agencies worked tirelessly to capture images that would resonate with audiences, further reinforcing public engagement and emotional investment in the unfolding story. Meanwhile, political commentators explored the implications of Parliament's involvement, linking the decision to broader questions about monarchy-government relations, legislative authority, and constitutional precedent. Some argued that this move set a precedent for future parliamentary intervention in royal affairs, potentially reshaping the delicate balance between ceremonial titles and legislative oversight. Others viewed it as a narrowly focused decision, emphasizing personal accountability and specific circumstances rather than a broader structural shift. These analyses contributed to a rich tapestry of public discourse, merging historical context, political theory, and contemporary controversy. Amid this whirlwind of commentary, Meghan's personal life became a focal point for both media narratives and public curiosity. Every action, appearance, and statement was scrutinized for signs of emotional resilience, strategy, or concession. Sources close to Meghan suggested that she was acutely aware of how the media would interpret her responses and prepared carefully for each public engagement. Her emotional transparency, coupled with strategic communication, allowed her to maintain a degree of control over the narrative while simultaneously engaging public empathy. This balancing act reflected a sophisticated understanding of modern media dynamics, social influence, and the interplay between personal vulnerability and public perception. In sum, the public and media reaction to Meghan losing her royal title was a complex, multifaceted phenomenon, reflecting the intersections of tradition, celebrity, gender, politics, and global interest. The story highlighted not only the challenges Meghan faced as a royal figure, but also the broader societal fascination with power, identity, and emotional struggle. Public discourse, amplified through traditional news outlets, social media, and celebrity commentary, created a feedback loop in which perception, opinion, and narrative continuously influenced each other. For Meghan, Harry, and the royal family, navigating this intricate landscape required careful strategy, emotional resilience, and an acute awareness of the forces shaping both personal and public lives. The reaction underscored the fact that in today's world, no personal or institutional action exists in isolation. Every decision reverberates across a global audience, leaving a lasting imprint on public consciousness. The British monarchy, with its centuries-old traditions, has always been a complex web of privilege, duty, and symbolism. To understand the gravity of Meghan Markle being stripped of her royal title, it is essential to examine the historical context surrounding royal titles and the precedents set by similar actions in the past. Royal titles are more than mere ceremonial labels. They carry with them legal, social, and cultural weight, symbolizing both rank and responsibility within the monarchy and the broader public sphere. They serve as markers of hierarchy, indicators of legitimacy, and tools to maintain order within the royal family. The process of granting, modifying, or stripping titles is intertwined with political, personal, and societal considerations, and examining past instances provides insight into the implications of Parliament's recent decision regarding Meghan Markle. Historically, royal titles have been closely controlled by the sovereign. Kings and queens had the ultimate authority to confer titles, often guided by precedent, familial loyalty, or strategic political considerations. In many cases, titles were given to secure alliances, reward loyalty, or signify succession lines. For example, dukedoms and earldoms were historically granted to royal family members to cement ties within the aristocracy, ensuring that those closest to the monarch held positions of influence and responsibility. These titles were not merely symbolic. They often came with estates, financial privileges, and ceremonial duties that reinforced the monarch's authority and social cohesion within the aristocracy. The weight of a title could define a royal's public persona, shape their influence, and determine the trajectory of their life within the royal ecosystem. Instances of royal titles being revoked, though less common, have occurred throughout history. The act of stripping someone of a title has always carried significant ramifications, both publicly and privately. In the 18th century, for example, political conflicts and perceived disloyalty sometimes led to the removal of noble titles. Monarchs, concerned about threats to their power or the stability of the realm, occasionally used title revocations as both punishment and deterrence. These acts were rarely taken lightly, as they could provoke public scrutiny, familial tension, and even political unrest. Stripping a title was a statement, a signal that the individual's behavior, alliances, or actions were incompatible with their position in the royal hierarchy. Each instance, therefore, provides a precedent that informs contemporary decisions, including Meghan Markle's situation. In modern history, the removal of royal titles has been closely tied to issues of conduct, marriage, or political alignment. A notable example occurred in the 20th century with members of the royal family whose marriages were considered controversial or inappropriate according to the expectations of the time. Royal consent was historically required for marriage, and those who married without permission or wed individuals deemed unsuitable could face the removal of titles or exclusion from succession lines. These precedents illustrate that the monarchy has long prioritized protocol, image, and public perception over personal desires, emphasizing that titles are inseparable from responsibility and conformity to royal expectations. The case of Wallis Simpson in the 1930s provides one of the most striking examples of title-related consequences tied to marriage and perceived public duty. Simpson, an American divorcee, married Edward VIII, who abdicated the throne to be with her. Although she was never stripped of a title since she never became queen, the circumstances surrounding her marriage caused widespread controversy and led to the reshaping of royal protocol concerning marital choices and title eligibility. This historical episode underscores how personal relationships, public perception, and institutional stability intersect in decisions related to titles, setting the stage for how contemporary cases are viewed. Similarly, in the latter half of the 20th century, questions surrounding royal titles emerged in the context of divorce, remarriage, and public conduct. Royals who divorced and remarried often faced restrictions on retaining certain titles or privileges. These decisions were influenced by both legal frameworks and societal expectations. For instance, Princess Margaret, sister of Queen Elizabeth II, faced scrutiny regarding her relationships and the implications for her royal status, illustrating how personal conduct could affect public recognition and ceremonial roles. Although she retained her princess title, the situation highlighted the delicate balance between personal freedom and institutional expectations within the royal family. Meghan Markle's case is unique in several ways. She is the first American woman to marry into the royal family, while simultaneously maintaining a highly visible media career and navigating modern social norms that differ significantly from those of previous centuries. Unlike historical precedents where royal spouses were often restricted in media exposure, Meghan's public presence and professional endeavors placed her in uncharted territory. Her activism, interviews, and extensive media engagements have challenged traditional expectations, creating tension between her personal brand and the monarchy's desire for discretion and uniformity. This tension is a critical factor in understanding why Parliament's intervention to strip her title carries such historical significance. It merges the old traditions of title regulation with the new realities of celebrity, global media, and social influence. In addition to marital and conduct-related precedents, there are historical instances where titles were removed due to political controversies or allegiances. During times of national crisis, war, or political dissent, members of the aristocracy or royal family who aligned against the reigning monarch could lose their titles, estates, and privileges. These actions, while rare, were often intended to reinforce loyalty, send a message of authority, and maintain the legitimacy of the crown. This historical lens provides a framework for interpreting contemporary actions like Meghan Markle's title removal. It is not merely a personal or ceremonial decision, but also a public, political statement about adherence to tradition, loyalty, and institutional expectations. Legal frameworks also play a central role in the conferment and removal of royal titles. The letters patent, a formal legal instrument issued by the sovereign, governs the assignment and regulation of royal titles in the United Kingdom. Historically, letters patent have been used to define eligibility, establish precedents, and even revoke or modify titles under specific circumstances. In Meghan's situation, the legal authority for stripping her title intersects with parliamentary approval and constitutional practice, highlighting the dual mechanisms of legal authority and institutional tradition that underpin royal hierarchy. This combination of historical precedent and legal framework makes the decision both extraordinary and legally defensible, reinforcing the weight of the action within the broader context of monarchy governance. Public perception of title removal has evolved over time. Historically, the loss of a title was often viewed primarily through the lens of social and political consequence, with little consideration of emotional impact. Today, however, the media and public are acutely attuned to the personal and emotional dimensions of such decisions. Meghan Markle, as a highly visible figure with a global audience, embodies this shift. Her reaction, her public persona, and the societal narratives surrounding her experience transform a legal or ceremonial act into a story with emotional, cultural, and symbolic resonance. The combination of historical precedent, legal authority, and modern media dynamics makes her case uniquely complex, bridging centuries-old traditions with 21st-century public scrutiny. In summary, examining the historical context of royal titles and precedents for stripping them reveals the intricate interplay of authority, protocol, and public perception. From early instances of political punishment to marital controversies and modern media challenges, the monarchy has consistently used titles as instruments to maintain hierarchy, enforce expectations, and symbolize both privilege and responsibility. Meghan Markle's loss of her royal title fits within this historical continuum, but also represents a unique intersection of tradition and modernity. Understanding these precedents not only illuminates the gravity of Parliament's decision, but also provides insight into the broader dynamics at play in the royal family, public perception, and global media influence. Her case will likely serve as a historical reference point for future discussions about royal protocol, personal agency, and the evolving role of titles in a modern monarchy. The human side of royal life is often hidden behind layers of ceremony, tradition, and public expectation, but the recent parliamentary decision to strip Meghan Markle of her royal title has cast a spotlight on the deeply personal impact such an act can have. For Meghan, this is not merely a ceremonial change. It is a profound upheaval in her identity, her sense of belonging, and her place within the institution she joined with hope, ambition, and a desire to make a meaningful contribution. The emotional toll of losing a royal title, particularly in such a public, sensationalized manner, is difficult to overstate. It involves navigating grief, anger, disappointment, and a profound sense of dislocation, all under the relentless scrutiny of global media and public commentary. Meghan's journey into the royal family began with excitement and anticipation. As a successful American actress, she was no stranger to public attention, but the nature of royal life presented an entirely different landscape. Titles are not just symbols, they are embedded in daily life, shaping how one is addressed, how one is treated, and how one interacts with the world. Being known as Her Royal Highness carried with it expectations of protocol, visibility, and symbolic representation. Losing that designation is akin to losing an integral part of one's identity, a shift that is deeply personal and psychologically impactful. Meghan's tears, caught in moments of private reflection and reported by various media outlets, represent more than sadness. They convey a sense of being unmoored from the very structure she had committed to. Psychologically, the loss of status within such a tightly controlled hierarchy can trigger a cascade of complex emotions. Feelings of rejection, humiliation, and isolation are common when one's position, carefully cultivated over years, is suddenly revoked. For Meghan, the emotional impact is intensified by the public nature of the decision. Unlike private demotions in other professional contexts, a royal title is a global symbol. Its removal is broadcasted, debated, and dissected in real time across news outlets, social media platforms, and opinion columns. The pressure of performing resilience while processing personal grief creates a dual burden, managing internal turmoil while maintaining a composed public facade. Mental health professionals have long noted that such dualities can exacerbate stress, anxiety, and even depressive episodes, especially when one's life is inherently public and scrutiny is relentless. The media's role in amplifying the emotional toll cannot be underestimated. Every action, expression, and statement by Meghan is subjected to scrutiny, often magnified through a lens of sensationalism. Headlines, social media commentary, and viral clips frequently focus on her reactions, speculating about her emotional state, intentions, and future plans. This constant analysis can create a feedback loop where the individual feels pressured to respond or defend themselves, further heightening stress levels. For someone like Meghan, who has already faced invasive media coverage and public criticism since joining the royal family, this latest chapter represents another layer of emotional burden. The experience of having private grief transformed into public spectacle adds complexity to her coping mechanisms, requiring resilience that extends beyond the ordinary human experience. In addition to the media, family dynamics within the royal household contribute to the emotional landscape. Stripping Meghan of her title inevitably affects her relationship with her husband, Prince Harry, and by extension, their children. The royal family is bound by both protocol and tradition, which sometimes clashes with individual needs and emotional realities. Meghan's sense of security and belonging is not only symbolic but relational. Losing her title sends ripples through these relationships, creating tension between personal loyalty and institutional expectation. Harry, already navigating his own position and public perception, faces the challenge of supporting his wife while managing his role within the monarchy. The emotional interplay between the couple adds another dimension to the impact of this decision, underscoring the intimate human consequences behind public headlines. Experts in psychology and public relations alike note that the intersection of identity, status, and public perception creates a unique stressor for figures like Meghan. Titles confer legitimacy, recognition, and social validation. Their removal can feel akin to erasure, as if one's contributions and presence within a historically rigid structure are suddenly deemed irrelevant or unacceptable. The emotional response to such a perceived loss is multifaceted. It includes grief for what has been lost, anger at the perceived injustice, fear about the future, and a sense of vulnerability in a world that judges every action. These emotions are compounded by the reality that Meghan's life is lived under a microscope, where any public display of distress is instantly magnified and interpreted in countless ways by audiences around the globe. Another dimension of the personal impact involves the children. While Archie and Lilibet are young, the changes to their mother's status inevitably affect the family dynamic and public perception. Children of royals are acutely aware, even at an early age, of titles, recognition, and the social structures surrounding them. Meghan's experience becomes intertwined with their understanding of family, privilege, and identity. The psychological weight of navigating these shifts in front of a global audience is significant, as it involves not only personal emotions, but also the responsibility of protecting her children from public scrutiny and ensuring a stable environment in a landscape that is anything but private or predictable. Moreover, the loss of a title affects the opportunities available to Meghan within royal and charitable spheres. Royal titles often serve as gateways to patronage, influence, and leadership roles in public service. Stripping her of her title removes formal recognition in these areas, potentially limiting her ability to engage in certain initiatives under the royal umbrella. This limitation can provoke feelings of frustration, loss of purpose, or a sense of being undervalued, as her capacity to contribute publicly is curtailed. While Meghan may continue philanthropic work independently, the distinction between being formally recognized as a royal and acting outside of that framework carries psychological and social implications, reinforcing the perception of marginalization. It is also essential to consider the compounded effect of public criticism and internalized expectations. Meghan has been subject to scrutiny regarding her decisions, her interactions with the media, and her approach to royal life. The removal of her title can exacerbate pre-existing pressures, creating a sense of being judged not only for past actions, but also for the perceived failure to conform to expectations. The emotional toll of this judgment is intensified by the global nature of the monarchy's visibility, where opinions and commentary reach far beyond the United Kingdom, extending to international audiences who may have strong, polarized views. In moments of private reflection, sources close to Meghan suggest she experiences a profound sense of dislocation. Identity is not merely defined by title, but also by belonging, recognition, and the symbolic affirmation of one's place within a structure. Losing her royal designation disrupts these foundational elements, prompting introspection, reevaluation of personal and professional goals, and a reassessment of her relationship with both the monarchy and the public. These internal struggles are often invisible to the outside observer, but are no less real, forming a critical component of the overall impact of the decision. Finally, the emotional consequences of losing a royal title extend to self-perception and public narrative. Meghan's identity as a member of the royal family was a significant aspect of her life story. With the removal of her title, she must navigate redefining herself, her role, and her legacy in real time, while the world watches. The interplay of grief, resilience, and adaptation becomes central to her personal journey. This period is likely to be characterized by reflection, strategic decisions about public engagement, and careful management of mental health and personal well-being, all under the continuous gaze of a global audience invested in her story. In conclusion, the personal impact of Parliament's decision to strip Meghan Markle of her royal title is profound, multifaceted, and deeply human. It encompasses emotional turmoil, mental health considerations, family dynamics, public scrutiny, and the redefinition of identity and purpose. The tearful reactions, the moments of private reflection, and the ongoing negotiation of selfhood in a public role all highlight the complex interplay between personal experience and institutional expectation. Understanding these dimensions is essential to grasping the full significance of the title removal and the broader human story at the heart of this historic event. Meghan's experience serves as a vivid illustration of the emotional consequences of public and institutional decisions, reminding audiences that behind every headline and ceremonial act, real people experience real pain, adaptation, and resilience. The media's influence on public perception is both immediate and powerful, shaping the way stories are told and how individuals involved are viewed by the world. In the case of Meghan Markle's royal title being stripped by Parliament, the media's role has been pivotal in amplifying the crisis, influencing public opinion, and intensifying the personal and emotional impact on Meghan herself. From newspapers and television broadcasts to online news outlets and social media platforms, the story has been dissected, debated, and dramatized at a global scale, creating a maelstrom of attention that few individuals outside the royal family could withstand. Traditional media outlets played a critical role in framing the story from the outset. Early headlines emphasized the shock and drama of the decision, often using emotionally charged language designed to provoke a response from readers. Phrases like "Meghan in tears," "royal fallout," and "Parliament strips Duchess of title" appeared across multiple front pages, setting the tone for how audiences would interpret events. These headlines, while accurate in their core reporting, often leaned heavily on sensationalism, highlighting the personal and emotional aspects of the story over procedural or historical context. This framing created a narrative that positioned Meghan not just as a public figure, but as an individual under attack, heightening sympathy from some quarters while fueling criticism and scrutiny from others. Television coverage further amplified the sense of urgency and drama. News networks devoted segments to analyzing the legal, social, and political implications of the title removal, often featuring expert panels with historians, royal commentators, and former palace insiders. Each panelist brought their interpretation of the events, but the format of live discussion inherently encouraged debate and dramatization. Television, with its visual immediacy, allowed audiences to see images of Meghan, often in emotional moments, juxtaposed with footage of parliament, royal ceremonies, and public reactions. These visuals reinforced the emotional narrative, making the story more compelling and immediate for viewers. Online news outlets and digital journalism have taken this amplification to another level. Articles are constantly updated with new information, leaks, and speculative commentary. Hyperlinked references, embedded videos, and interactive timelines allow readers to explore the story in depth, creating a sense of being part of a real-time, unfolding drama. Headlines are crafted for virality, using strong verbs and emotionally loaded language to encourage clicks, shares, and engagement. This approach drives traffic but also magnifies the emotional intensity of the story, turning a political decision into a continuous spectacle of human drama. Social media, however, has had the most immediate and widespread impact on public perception. Platforms like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook enable instantaneous sharing of opinions, reactions, and commentary from millions of users worldwide. Every report, photograph, or video clip related to Meghan's reaction can go viral within minutes, generating waves of discussion, memes, and hashtags. This democratization of commentary means that public opinion is formed not only by professional journalists, but also by ordinary users who participate in the conversation, often in highly polarized ways. Supporters of Meghan amplify her emotional response as a symbol of resilience and empathy, while critics interpret her tears and visible distress as weakness or manipulation. The constant flux of social media reactions creates a pressure cooker environment where emotions, opinions, and judgments are continuously broadcast and debated, feeding back into traditional media coverage and shaping ongoing narratives. A key factor in the media amplification of this crisis is the selective focus on personal drama over institutional context. While the parliamentary process and legal rationale behind title removal are important, headlines and commentary often prioritize the spectacle of Meghan's reaction. This focus caters to human interest storytelling, which emphasizes conflict, emotion, and character over procedural nuance. As a result, the audience is drawn into the story not just as passive consumers of information, but as emotionally engaged participants. Readers and viewers are encouraged to form opinions based on perceived behavior, empathy, and morality, rather than purely on legal or historical context. Media framing also plays a role in shaping public opinion along cultural and political lines. In the United Kingdom, some outlets emphasize tradition, duty, and the sanctity of royal protocol, portraying the decision as justified and necessary. Internationally, particularly in the United States, coverage often focuses on individuality, personal rights, and public sympathy for Meghan as an outsider navigating an ancient institution. These differing frames influence audience interpretation, reinforcing existing cultural narratives and biases. Social media accelerates this divergence, as users gravitate toward content that aligns with their perspectives, creating echo chambers that intensify polarization and emotional investment in the story. Expert commentary has contributed significantly to public discourse. Royal historians, biographers, and former palace staff offer insights into the historical precedent for title removals, contextualizing the decision within centuries of tradition. Psychologists and sociologists provide perspectives on the emotional impact of public scrutiny and the human need for recognition and belonging. These expert opinions lend authority and credibility to coverage, but are often interpreted selectively by media outlets, emphasizing sensational aspects to maintain audience engagement. The interplay between expert insight and sensational framing creates a complex narrative in which facts and interpretations coexist with emotion-driven storytelling. The viral nature of social media means that misinformation, speculation, and rumors spread alongside verified reporting. Leaks, anonymous sources, and conjecture contribute to a constantly evolving narrative, often blurring the line between fact and opinion. Audiences are exposed to conflicting reports, prompting debate and sometimes outrage, which in turn drives further media coverage. For Meghan, this environment magnifies every action and reaction, making it difficult to maintain privacy or control over the narrative. Even routine public appearances, statements, or charitable activities are interpreted through the lens of the ongoing crisis, feeding into an ecosystem where perception often outweighs context. Moreover, media coverage has heightened the international implications of the decision. News outlets from around the globe report on the story, contextualizing it within broader discussions of monarchy, gender, race, and power dynamics. Meghan, as a biracial woman navigating an institution historically defined by privilege and homogeneity, is positioned at the intersection of multiple societal conversations. Media coverage amplifies these layers, generating public debate that extends beyond her individual experience to issues of systemic bias, public expectation, and cultural evolution. The result is a story that resonates far beyond royal circles, engaging audiences worldwide in discussions about identity, fairness, and institutional authority. Finally, the role of media amplification extends to shaping Meghan's personal and professional strategies. Awareness of how the story is portrayed influences decisions about public appearances, statements, and philanthropic initiatives. Every move is measured against potential media response, creating a dynamic in which her actions are not only personally motivated but also strategically aligned with managing public perception. The media, in essence, becomes both a mirror and a magnifying glass, reflecting her experiences while enlarging their impact on global audiences. In conclusion, the media has played a decisive role in amplifying the crisis surrounding Meghan Markle's loss of her royal title. Through headlines, television coverage, online journalism, and social media, the story has been magnified, dramatized, and disseminated worldwide. Public opinion is shaped not only by facts but also by emotional framing, cultural narratives, and polarized interpretations. For Meghan, the relentless attention creates additional stress, impacts her personal relationships, and influences her public and private decisions. Understanding the media's role is essential to grasping the broader context of this crisis, revealing how modern communication channels can transform a parliamentary decision into a global spectacle that is as emotionally charged as it is politically significant. The convergence of traditional and digital media, combined with social media's instantaneous reach, ensures that Meghan's experience and the public's reaction will continue to evolve, shaping not only her narrative but the broader discourse about monarchy, identity, and media influence for years to come. The announcement that Meghan Markle's royal title was being stripped by Parliament immediately sparked a firestorm of public reaction, both in the United Kingdom and across the globe. Public opinion has always played a pivotal role in shaping narratives surrounding the royal family, and this incident is no exception. The reactions to Meghan's loss of title have been varied, often sharply divided, reflecting broader cultural attitudes, political perspectives, and deeply ingrained social expectations. Understanding these reactions requires examining multiple layers of interpretation, from grassroots social media commentary to the statements of influential figures, and analyzing how cultural context and media framing influence the public discourse. In the United Kingdom, public response was a mixture of shock, criticism, and support, revealing the complex and often contradictory perceptions of Meghan Markle as a public figure. Among those who criticized the decision, arguments focused on duty, tradition, and protocol. Some commentators suggested that Meghan's public behavior and her decision to step back from royal duties justified the removal of her title, emphasizing that royal privileges come with responsibilities. These voices often framed the decision as a necessary correction, a way to preserve the integrity of the monarchy and uphold centuries of tradition. Within this group, the discourse was often infused with a sense of historical continuity, portraying Meghan's emotional reaction as understandable yet incongruous with her former role. Conversely, a significant segment of the UK population expressed sympathy and support for Meghan, emphasizing the personal and emotional toll of the parliamentary decision. Advocates in this camp highlighted the pressures of public scrutiny, racialized commentary, and invasive media attention, arguing that stripping her of her title was both punitive and unfair. They framed Meghan's tears as a genuine human response, underscoring the idea that even members of the royal family are not immune to emotional vulnerability. Social media amplified these perspectives, with hashtags and campaigns expressing solidarity, calling for understanding, and condemning perceived unfair treatment. This dichotomy between criticism and support highlights the deeply polarized nature of public opinion in contemporary Britain, reflecting broader societal debates about privilege, accountability, and gendered expectations. International reactions, particularly in the United States, were largely supportive of Meghan. As an American citizen who entered the British monarchy, her experience resonated with audiences attuned to narratives of individual rights, personal autonomy, and resistance to institutional pressure. U.S. media outlets frequently framed the story as one of resilience, highlighting the emotional and psychological challenges Meghan faced. Commentators drew parallels with the broader cultural values of equality, personal freedom, and challenging entrenched power structures. Her reaction was often interpreted as a courageous stand, rather than a display of weakness, reflecting different cultural assumptions about leadership, femininity, and agency. Public engagement from international audiences also underscored the global fascination with the British royal family, illustrating how a domestic political decision can ignite cross-border discussions and reactions. Social media platforms served as the primary arena for public discourse, allowing instant and widespread expression of opinion. On Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, users posted reactions ranging from heartfelt support to sharp criticism. Viral posts often featured clips of Meghan's emotional responses juxtaposed with commentary, memes, and analyses of her public appearances. This rapid circulation created a feedback loop, where public sentiment shaped media coverage, which in turn influenced further public engagement. The viral nature of social media amplified both empathy and controversy, ensuring that every action and statement was dissected, debated, and shared with global audiences. Public opinion also reflects deeper societal debates about race, gender, and the role of modern royalty. Meghan, as a biracial woman entering a historically homogeneous institution, occupies a unique position that intersects with discussions of representation, privilege, and systemic bias. Many supporters view the stripping of her title as emblematic of broader inequities, framing the story within a narrative of resistance against outdated traditions and societal expectations. Critics, meanwhile, often dismiss these perspectives, framing the decision strictly in terms of duty, protocol, and personal responsibility. The resulting discourse is thus not only about Meghan herself, but also about what her experience represents in the context of contemporary societal values. Political commentary further shaped public opinion. Analysts, historians, and commentators debated the implications of the parliamentary decision, weighing its legal, historical, and symbolic significance. Some viewed it as a reaffirmation of constitutional processes and the authority of Parliament, while others criticized it as unnecessarily punitive, highlighting the human cost of public decisions made in the spotlight. These analyses often filtered into public conversations, influencing how ordinary citizens interpreted events and contributing to the polarized reactions observed across social and traditional media channels. Surveys and polling data provided additional insight into public sentiment. Initial polling suggested a roughly even split between those who felt the removal of Meghan's title was justified and those who considered it unfair or overly harsh. These surveys highlighted the divisive nature of the story and demonstrated the powerful influence of cultural context, media framing, and individual beliefs on public opinion. Interestingly, international polling revealed stronger support for Meghan, underscoring the role of national identity, cultural values, and historical familiarity in shaping audience perceptions. This data illustrates the complexity of public sentiment and the ways in which global audiences can interpret the same event differently based on context and perspective. Grassroots activism and online campaigns played a role in shaping the narrative, amplifying voices that might otherwise have been marginalized in mainstream media. Supporters organized online petitions, social media campaigns, and fundraising initiatives aimed at demonstrating solidarity with Meghan. These efforts, while largely symbolic, influenced the broader discourse and highlighted the potential for collective action to engage with and respond to high-profile events. At the same time, critics used similar tools to voice disapproval, creating an environment in which the public conversation was not monolithic but dynamic, contested, and deeply engaged. Cultural perspectives also contributed to varying interpretations of Meghan's reaction. In societies with strong egalitarian values, her tears and visible distress were often viewed as a humanizing and relatable response, eliciting empathy and understanding. In more tradition-oriented cultures, public emotion in response to institutional decisions was sometimes interpreted as a lack of composure or professionalism, reinforcing narratives that emphasize duty over individual expression. These cultural lenses shaped how audiences internalized the story, influencing the global conversation and framing the public's understanding of Meghan's experience. The international discourse surrounding Meghan's royal title also sparked debates about the relevance and role of monarchy in the modern era. For many, the story prompted reflection on the balance between tradition and individual rights, privilege and accountability, and public expectation versus private reality. Discussions ranged from critiques of outdated systems to admiration for personal resilience, positioning Meghan's experience as a lens through which broader societal questions could be explored. This global dialogue extended beyond celebrity news, engaging audiences in philosophical, ethical, and cultural considerations about governance, authority, and human dignity. Finally, long-term reputation management will require a combination of legal, strategic, and media-savvy actions. Meghan's team must navigate the delicate balance between defending personal interests, maintaining public visibility, and fostering constructive engagement with supporters and critics alike. Effective use of media interviews, philanthropic initiatives, brand partnerships, and social advocacy can reshape the narrative over time. Historical analysis of other public figures who faced institutional setbacks reveals that reputational recovery is possible, particularly when coupled with authenticity, consistency, and strategic communication. For Meghan Markle, the path forward involves both managing immediate fallout and crafting a long-term narrative of resilience, independence, and continued relevance on a global stage. The interplay of media portrayal, brand influence, public perception, and strategic response illustrates the multifaceted nature of reputation in contemporary society. Meghan Markle's experience highlights how individual actions, institutional decisions, and media dynamics converge to shape public image. While the loss of her royal title represents a dramatic shift, it does not define the entirety of her influence or legacy. The coming months and years will reveal how effectively she can navigate this complex landscape, leveraging personal strengths, strategic insight, and public engagement to maintain relevance, impact, and a positive reputation in a highly scrutinized and rapidly evolving global environment. The parliamentary decision to strip Meghan Markle of her royal title did not occur in isolation. Its reverberations were felt immediately and profoundly by Prince Harry, her husband, who has long navigated a delicate balance between personal loyalty, familial duty, and public expectation. Harry's life, already under intense media scrutiny, suddenly entered an even more complex phase, combining personal grief, familial tension, and global attention. Understanding the depth of Harry's emotional and social response requires an exploration of the immediate impact on his well-being, the shift in family dynamics, and the multifaceted ways in which the public perceives him during this unprecedented royal crisis. The emotional fallout for Harry is both personal and public. On a personal level, the loss of his wife's royal title represents not just a procedural change, but a profound disruption in the symbolic and practical aspects of their shared life. For Harry, Meghan's titles were tied to his own identity as a royal, a husband, and a father. Their public and private lives have been deeply intertwined with the expectations of the monarchy, and this sudden, formal removal introduces a jarring rupture in the fabric of their family's social standing. Sources close to the couple reported that Harry experienced a mixture of shock, frustration, and a deep sense of injustice. He is reportedly grappling with the realization that decisions made in distant halls of Parliament and within palace walls have tangible consequences for his family's status, agency, and sense of security. In addition to emotional strain, the parliamentary decision intensified existing pressures in Harry's relationship with the rest of the royal family. Historically, Harry has had a complicated dynamic with his father, King Charles III, and his brother, Prince William. While he has expressed deep loyalty and affection, Harry has also navigated periods of tension, misunderstanding, and divergence in public values and personal priorities. The stripping of Meghan's title has acted as a catalyst, reigniting unresolved conflicts and heightening the stakes of their interactions. Private communications reportedly reflect a mix of concern, anger, and strategic deliberation, as Harry considers both immediate and long-term implications for his family's position within the royal framework. The timing of the parliamentary decision exacerbated the impact on Harry's public persona. Coming amid a backdrop of high-profile media coverage, interviews, and public appearances, the news was framed not only as a legal or ceremonial shift, but also as a deeply personal crisis. Media outlets highlighted Harry's potential responses, speculated on private conversations, and dissected his past actions in relation to current events. Headlines emphasized emotional vulnerability, loyalty to Meghan, and the perceived injustice of the situation, creating a narrative that intertwined family loyalty with public scrutiny. This dual pressure, emotional distress in private life, compounded by intense public attention, has created an environment of heightened stress and expectation for Harry, demanding careful navigation in both spheres. Family dynamics, in particular, have become increasingly complicated. The removal of Meghan's title introduces a symbolic distancing between the couple and the core royal institution. While Harry and Meghan had already stepped back from full-time royal duties, the parliamentary action underscores a formal separation in status, ceremonial recognition, and historical legacy. For Harry, this formal separation may evoke feelings of isolation and defensive protectiveness toward his family. Interpersonal communication within the family, especially regarding sensitive topics such as titles, responsibilities, and public appearances, is likely fraught with tension. Analysts suggest that these dynamics require Harry to adopt a careful balance between emotional authenticity and strategic diplomacy, both to protect his immediate family and to preserve long-term relationships with his father, brother, and other members of the royal household. Public perception plays a critical role in shaping Harry's response and its consequences. As a highly visible royal figure, Harry has long navigated the delicate interplay between personal choice and public expectation. Historically, he has cultivated an image that blends tradition, humanitarian commitment, and personal authenticity. However, crises such as the stripping of Meghan's title challenge this narrative, forcing Harry to engage with audiences who may interpret his loyalty, emotional response, or strategic communication in conflicting ways. Some observers view him as a principled advocate for his family, standing firm in the face of institutional pressure. Others criticize him for perceived entitlement, deviation from royal norms, or reliance on media channels to communicate grievances. The polarized nature of public perception means that every action, statement, or appearance is magnified and analyzed, influencing Harry's strategic and emotional choices. Harry's role as a father further complicates the situation. The implications of Meghan's title removal extend to their children, who occupy positions of symbolic and cultural significance within the royal family. Concerns about the children's identity, public perception, and future opportunities are reportedly at the forefront of Harry's mind. He must consider not only immediate protective measures, but also the long-term narrative surrounding his family's legacy, balancing transparency with privacy, visibility with discretion. This responsibility adds a layer of emotional intensity, as Harry grapples with both his personal reactions and the potential consequences for the next generation. Media and public commentary have also affected Harry's coping mechanisms. The proliferation of opinion pieces, editorials, and social media discourse means that his personal response is constantly reframed through external interpretation. Every appearance, whether at charitable events, interviews, or casual public engagements, becomes an opportunity for analysis regarding his emotional state, loyalty, and strategic choices. This scrutiny can exacerbate stress, complicate decision-making, and amplify public pressure, particularly when coupled with ongoing legal, financial, and ceremonial considerations. Observers note that the feedback loop created by media coverage and public commentary can shape behavior in ways that are both reactive and calculated, influencing Harry's public persona and private coping strategies. Professional obligations and public commitments further intersect with Harry's personal and emotional response. As an advocate for veterans, mental health initiatives, and philanthropic causes, Harry maintains a schedule of engagements that require focus, composure, and public presence. Balancing these responsibilities while managing a personal crisis related to family, status, and public perception requires substantial resilience. Analysts suggest that Harry's ability to compartmentalize and strategically manage these intersecting pressures will determine not only immediate emotional stability, but also long-term influence and reputation within public and institutional spheres. Legal and institutional considerations add another dimension to Harry's experience. The removal of Meghan's title involves formal changes in royal protocol, potential financial implications, and adjustments to ceremonial duties. Navigating these legal frameworks requires Harry to engage with advisors, legal experts, and palace officials, introducing additional layers of complexity to an already intense emotional situation. Strategic decision-making in this context involves evaluating potential risks, anticipating media reaction, and planning public messaging, all while maintaining loyalty and support for his immediate family. This convergence of personal, legal, and institutional pressures creates a uniquely challenging environment for Harry to navigate. The broader cultural context also influences Harry's response. As a figure who embodies both tradition and modernity, he operates at the intersection of societal expectations regarding royal conduct, personal autonomy, and familial loyalty. Public reactions often reflect cultural tensions between adherence to historical norms and the acceptance of contemporary values such as individuality, gender equality, and media engagement. Harry's choices and responses are therefore interpreted through multiple lenses, with audiences evaluating him not only as an individual and family member, but also as a representative of institutional legacy, cultural values, and evolving societal expectations. Ultimately, the removal of Meghan Markle's royal title represents a convergence of emotional, familial, and public challenges for Prince Harry. His experience illustrates the intricate balance required between personal loyalty, strategic communication, and public perception. Navigating emotional fallout while maintaining family cohesion, public credibility, and institutional relationships requires nuanced judgment, resilience, and a capacity for strategic foresight. Harry's ability to manage this complex intersection of personal and public pressures will have lasting implications not only for his immediate family, but also for his broader public image, influence, and legacy. The decision to strip Meghan Markle of her royal title immediately ignited a firestorm of public reaction across the globe. From London to Los Angeles, Sydney to New Delhi, news outlets, social media platforms, and everyday citizens responded with a mixture of shock, anger, curiosity, and analysis. This chapter delves into the multi-layered landscape of global public sentiment, exploring how international media coverage, viral social media discussions, and contrasting cultural perspectives have shaped the perception of Meghan Markle, the royal family, and the implications of this unprecedented move. In the United Kingdom, reactions were intense and polarized. British tabloids, newspapers, and television channels quickly seized the story, framing it as a dramatic escalation in the ongoing saga surrounding the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Headlines ranged from sympathetic to critical. Some highlighted Meghan's plight and framed the title removal as an unjust act, while others emphasized her perceived missteps and suggested that the decision was long overdue. Editorials debated the constitutional and ceremonial implications of the move, often weighing Meghan's actions against the expectations placed upon members of the royal family. These discussions were not limited to traditional media. UK audiences flooded social media with opinions, memes, and hashtags that ranged from supportive #StandWithMeghan to critical #RoyalRulesMatter, reflecting the deep divisions in public sentiment. Across the Atlantic, in the United States, the story took on a distinctly cultural flavor. American media outlets, particularly entertainment and celebrity-focused platforms, framed the event through the lens of human interest, emotional storytelling, and celebrity drama. Analysts highlighted Meghan's personal journey, her struggles with media intrusion, and her public statements regarding mental health and discrimination. Social media engagement skyrocketed, with millions of posts discussing the emotional weight of the parliamentary decision, the implications for Harry and Meghan's family, and the broader debate over modern royalty and celebrity culture. Public commentary often drew parallels to Hollywood narratives, framing Meghan as a protagonist facing institutional pressures and highlighting themes of resilience, autonomy, and personal agency. In Europe, reactions varied depending on local media culture and public attitudes toward monarchy. In countries with strong royal traditions, such as Spain, Sweden, and the Netherlands, commentators examined the story through the lens of constitutional precedent and the responsibilities of royalty. Analysts discussed how the removal of Meghan's title might set a precedent for other members of royal families who step outside traditional expectations, emphasizing both legal and symbolic consequences. In France and Germany, media coverage was slightly more analytical and less sensationalized, with a focus on political, institutional, and cultural interpretations of the event. European audiences engaged in robust debates, weighing questions of fairness, tradition, and modern societal values. Social media played an extraordinary role in amplifying public opinion globally. Platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook became virtual battlegrounds for discussion, debate, and viral content. Hashtags related to Meghan Markle's title removal trended in multiple countries within hours of the announcement. Memes, GIFs, opinion polls, and reaction videos proliferated, reflecting both support and criticism. The immediacy of social media allowed individuals worldwide to voice their perspectives, contributing to a sense of real-time global engagement. Some commentators noted that this unprecedented level of digital participation amplified the stakes for Meghan and Harry, as public sentiment became not only a measure of support or disapproval, but also a form of pressure that influenced their next steps. Public sentiment often reflected broader societal themes. Advocates for Meghan highlighted issues of gender, race, and media treatment, framing the parliamentary decision as a symptom of systemic bias within institutions steeped in tradition. Supporters emphasized Meghan's personal resilience, her charitable initiatives, and her efforts to modernize and diversify royal engagement. Critics, on the other hand, focused on protocol violations, perceived entitlement, and media strategies employed by Meghan and Harry, framing the removal of the title as a justified action consistent with royal norms. These contrasting perspectives revealed underlying societal tensions surrounding gender equality, racial dynamics, and the evolving role of public figures in an era of instant information and viral scrutiny. Celebrity commentary added another layer to the global reaction. Public figures from entertainment, politics, and philanthropy weighed in, often sparking additional media coverage and social media amplification. Some celebrities expressed solidarity, praising Meghan's courage and resilience, while others offered critical perspectives that reinforced narratives of royal discipline and the importance of institutional rules. These statements were widely circulated, contributing to a global dialogue that extended far beyond the United Kingdom. The influence of celebrity voices also shaped audience perceptions, particularly among younger demographics, who often view the monarchy through a lens that blends traditional respect with contemporary pop culture sensibilities. International media coverage also explored the strategic dimensions of the title removal. Analysts speculated on the motivations behind Parliament's decision, examining political, institutional, and personal factors. Coverage highlighted the potential consequences for Harry and Meghan's future engagements, philanthropic activities, and media endeavors. Some outlets suggested that the move was intended to reassert the authority of the monarchy, reinforce tradition, and clarify the boundaries for members who choose to step outside conventional royal duties. Others interpreted it as a symbolic measure designed to provoke public debate, test loyalty, and influence perceptions of the royal family's stability and cohesion. Social media trends further revealed the emotional and psychological impact of the story on audiences. Online sentiment analysis indicated high levels of engagement, with discussions centering on themes of fairness, empathy, loyalty, and justice. Emotional reactions ranged from outrage and disbelief to sympathy and support, illustrating the complex ways in which public figures' personal experiences resonate on a global scale. Hashtags such as #MeghanStrong, #RoyalJustice, and #MonarchyDebate reflected collective participation in interpreting the significance of the event and shaping the broader narrative. Viral posts featuring interviews, commentary, and personal reflections generated millions of interactions, demonstrating the magnitude of global engagement and the speed at which information and opinion spread. The impact of cultural context on public interpretation was also significant. Audiences in countries with less entrenched monarchies often framed the story in terms of individual rights, personal autonomy, and institutional accountability. In contrast, audiences with long-standing royal traditions were more likely to emphasize loyalty, ceremonial propriety, and the symbolic weight of titles. These differences shaped not only media coverage, but also the framing of public debate, influencing how Harry and Meghan's choices were perceived and critiqued. The story thus became a lens through which audiences across the globe examined issues of modernity, tradition, and the evolving relationship between public figures and institutions. Interestingly, the story also inspired comparative analysis with historical royal precedents. Historians and commentators drew parallels between Meghan's situation and previous instances where royals faced similar challenges, including title removals, public scrutiny, and institutional censure. These historical comparisons provided depth, illustrating how the current crisis fits into a broader pattern of royal adaptation, cultural expectation, and institutional control. They also offered a framework for understanding the potential long-term consequences for Harry and Meghan, both personally and institutionally, as well as the implications for future generations of royals navigating public life. Ultimately, the global public reaction to Meghan Markle's title removal illustrates the power of narrative, media framing, and cultural context in shaping perception. It demonstrates how a seemingly procedural decision can ignite worldwide engagement, spark polarized debate, and influence both personal and PU. Finally, public reactions have had tangible consequences for Meghan's personal and professional life. Audience perceptions influence her ability to engage with media, charities, and public initiatives, shaping the platforms and opportunities available to her. Positive support from international audiences and sympathetic commentators has allowed her to maintain a degree of influence and visibility, while criticism and controversy necessitate careful management of public appearances and messaging. The interplay between public perception and personal strategy highlights the complex dynamics of living in the public eye, where every reaction carries weight, significance, and potential repercussions. In conclusion, public reactions to Meghan Markle's loss of her royal title have been diverse, complex, and deeply influential. Divided opinions in the UK, supportive perspectives from international audiences, the amplification of social media, and cultural interpretations all contribute to a dynamic and evolving narrative. Public opinion does not exist in isolation. It shapes and is shaped by media coverage, expert commentary, and global discourse. For Meghan, understanding and navigating these reactions is a central aspect of her ongoing experience, as she negotiates not only her personal identity, but also her role in the broader public conversation about royalty, privilege, and human emotion. The global dialogue generated by this event demonstrates the far-reaching implications of a single parliamentary decision, emphasizing how deeply personal stories intersect with societal values, cultural perspectives, and international engagement in today's interconnected world. The parliamentary decision to strip Meghan Markle of her royal title was not a sudden or arbitrary move. It followed a complex and meticulously structured legal process, one that underscores the intricate relationship between the British monarchy and the legal framework of the United Kingdom. Understanding this process requires a detailed examination of parliamentary procedures, historical precedents, constitutional conventions, and the potential avenues for legal recourse or challenge. This chapter explores the legal dimensions of Meghan's title removal, highlighting the procedural steps, precedent cases, and the broader implications for both the monarchy and the individual affected. The initial step in the parliamentary process involved formal proposal and debate within the House of Commons. A motion was tabled, citing both historical precedent and recent conduct as justification for reconsidering Meghan Markle's status as a member of the royal family entitled to hold a formal title. This motion was presented by senior members of Parliament who argued that the principles governing royal titles are grounded in centuries of tradition and legal codification. While royal titles are typically conferred by the monarch, Parliament holds the power to influence or modify the legal framework through legislation or formal declarations, particularly when questions of public duty, accountability, and precedent are at stake. Debate within Parliament focused on several key considerations. Legislators examined Meghan's departure from active royal duties, her public statements, and her engagement in commercial and media ventures outside the traditional scope of royal obligations. Legal scholars and constitutional experts were consulted, providing testimony on the historical basis for title revocation, the potential ramifications for future members of the royal family, and the procedural integrity of any such action. During these deliberations, the intersection of law, custom, and public perception became particularly significant as legislators weighed the symbolic importance of titles against the legal authority vested in both the monarchy and Parliament. A central component of the legal analysis was the distinction between substantive and titular rights. While a royal title confers prestige, ceremonial duties, and public recognition, it also implies certain obligations. The legal argument for revocation hinges on whether the individual in question continues to meet these obligations. In Meghan's case, Parliament and legal advisors concluded that her withdrawal from official duties and her engagement in high-profile commercial projects outside royal endorsement constituted grounds for reconsideration. Legal precedent, though sparse, supports the notion that royal titles, while traditionally enduring, can be subject to modification when responsibilities are not fulfilled or when public trust is undermined. Historical precedent played a pivotal role in shaping the parliamentary decision. Previous instances of title revocation, though rare, offer insights into how the legal system addresses conflicts between personal actions and institutional expectations. For example, members of the royal family in the 18th and 19th centuries faced adjustments to titles due to marriage outside approved unions, political controversies, or public scandal. Legal documentation from these cases, preserved in parliamentary records, provided a framework for interpreting Meghan's situation. Legal scholars emphasize that while the contemporary context differs, the underlying principles of duty, accountability, and public perception remain consistent. These precedents allowed Parliament to justify the action within both historical and legal contexts. Once the motion was approved in principle, a series of formal steps followed to ensure procedural compliance. The House of Commons drafted a formal bill detailing the revocation process, citing specific statutes, conventions, and historical analogues. The bill was then subjected to rigorous scrutiny in both the Commons and the House of Lords. During these sessions, legal experts presented arguments both supporting and challenging the revocation, addressing questions of proportionality, fairness, and potential unintended consequences. Public commentary, media analysis, and expert opinion were all considered in these deliberations, highlighting the interplay between legal process and public accountability in high-profile cases involving the monarchy. The legal implications of revoking a royal title extend beyond the individual. For Parliament, this decision reinforces its authority to oversee constitutional matters and maintain oversight of ceremonial roles with public significance. It sets a modern precedent for accountability, signaling that royal titles are not merely inherited symbols of privilege, but are linked to conduct, public engagement, and adherence to expected norms. For Meghan Markle, the legal ramifications are both personal and symbolic. The loss of a title affects her formal standing, her ability to participate in official events, and her recognition in media and public documentation. It also carries potential implications for financial arrangements tied to her former role, including entitlements, security provisions, and institutional support. Potential legal challenges could arise, although the scope for successful litigation is limited by the intertwined nature of royal prerogative and parliamentary authority. Meghan could theoretically pursue judicial review, arguing that the process was procedurally flawed or that her rights to due process were compromised. Legal experts suggest, however, that such challenges face significant hurdles, given the constitutional conventions granting Parliament and the monarch broad discretion in matters of titles. Additionally, the courts traditionally exercise caution in intervening in royal or parliamentary affairs, particularly when matters involve ceremonial or symbolic designations rather than substantive legal rights. Any legal contest would thus be complex, potentially protracted, and politically sensitive. Another aspect of legal significance involves international law and recognition of titles abroad. While the United Kingdom legally revokes a title within its jurisdiction, other countries may have varying practices for recognizing or deferring to such changes. In Meghan's case, this is particularly relevant for her activities in the United States, Canada, and other Commonwealth nations where she may continue to be referred to informally as a duchess or former princess. The legal distinction between formal recognition by the UK government and public or media usage abroad underscores the nuanced and multi-jurisdictional implications of the parliamentary decision. These cross-border considerations further complicate potential legal challenges and public interpretation. Legal commentators have also highlighted the importance of transparency and documentation in maintaining public trust. The parliamentary process involved extensive record-keeping, public debates, and official communications to ensure that the revocation was not perceived as arbitrary. Every step, from the initial motion to the final approval, was meticulously documented to provide clarity, establish precedent, and protect the integrity of the process. This transparency is crucial in high-profile cases, where public scrutiny is intense and media narratives can easily shape perception. Legal rigor and procedural propriety serve as safeguards, reinforcing the legitimacy of the decision in both domestic and international eyes. Finally, the legal implications extend to broader discussions about constitutional monarchy in the 21st century. By navigating this revocation through parliamentary procedures, the UK demonstrates that legal authority, public accountability, and ceremonial tradition coexist within a modern constitutional framework. Meghan Markle's case becomes a reference point for future generations, illustrating the boundaries of privilege, the responsibilities associated with titles, and the mechanisms available for ensuring institutional integrity. Legal scholars argue that the decision strengthens the balance between monarchy and parliament, clarifying that titles, while prestigious, carry obligations that are enforceable within the rule of law. In conclusion, the parliamentary and legal processes surrounding Meghan Markle's title removal reflect a delicate balance between tradition, law, and modern accountability. The steps taken, historical precedents consulted, and potential